The Island of Kevin Quickfingers by Alan Graham. Although the Caribbean Sea was calm, I still managed to spend most of my journey to the island sick on the floor of my cabin, all thanks to fear and nervous excitement. I still couldn't believe that someone like me, who never won anything, had triumphed in the most important competition I'd ever entered. I'd lost friends since winning, obviously. Other, more bitter members of the fan club couldn't accept that I was the one worthy enough to travel halfway around the world to conduct an interview with the great man himself, Kevin Quickfingers Smoothby, guitarist with the band Galadriel Overdrive. Only the greatest, most mind-expanding, musically proficient progressive rock band to record a track capturing the history of the steam engine via the medium of a 15-minute guitar solo. No one had been granted an audience with a great guitarist in years, not just in terms of getting the man to agree to it, but also when it came to actually physically getting to the island. Its legal status was disputed by all its neighbours, and obviously there was the ongoing war. But a true fan is a brave fan, and with the help of the competition organisers, I found a small boat of mercenaries willing to take me there. As we approached the island, I saw a couple standing on the beach to welcome me. Thanks to all the posters covering my bedroom wall, I recognised Kevin Smoothby immediately. Obviously, he looked a lot older and paunchier than he had in his 70s heyday, but it was definitely him. Next to him, holding his guitar-playing hand, a hand that had once been insured for $6 million, was the most beautiful woman in a red bikini I had ever seen in actual real life. He saluted me as I leapt from the boat and splashed my way to meet them on the beach. "Welcome, pilgrim," he grinned expensively at me. Ms. Red Bikini next to him just sighed and looked bored. On the boat, I'd rehearsed over and over in my mind what I would say when I finally met the man. How much of an inspiration he was. How the mid-70s albums released by Galadriel Overdrive were so challenging and out there they made Pink Floyd sound like One Direction. I'd even prepared some nice things to say about his solo albums, which, I'll be honest, every fan knows deep down to be utter shite. But when I tried to speak, I was so excited that all that came out was The guitarist smiled reassuringly. He had clearly dealt with fans like me dozens of times before. "You must be shaken up by your journey here." He paused awkwardly. Ms. Red Bikini whispered my name loudly into his ear. "Oh yes, Michael. Of course it is. Well, I'm so glad you can join me here, Martin. You must have many questions to ask me on behalf of my millions of fans." As he spoke, I noticed that behind him, a discreet distance away, stood a small band of long-bearded, well-armed roadies. "But before any interview, I have a treat for you. You're going to be the first non-islander to hear a couple of brand new songs I've written." I wanted to thank him for this incredible honour, but all that came out was, "Wow." "Darling," the guitarist commanded Miss Red Bikini without actually looking at her, "fetch my acoustic guitar and tell the guys they can stand down. Matthew here was security vetted after winning the competition, so there's nothing to fear." I know I should have listened as he explained what his new songs were about. Fandom would have wanted to know every word, but I couldn't take my eyes off Ms. Red Bikini as she walked towards a particularly long-bearded guitar tech who I assumed was in charge. After a brief, agitated conversation, the men slunk away. Then something happened that I did not expect. The moment the last of the security roadies left, Ms. Red Bikini picked up a guitar and walked towards Kevin. Before I could say anything, she raised the guitar and brought it crashing down on his head. The guitarist collapsed unconscious to the floor. I was so surprised. I couldn't move for the 3 seconds it required for Ms. Red Bikini to knock me out too. Okay, at this stage I should probably take a step back and explain a bit more about the situation, just in case anyone hearing this is so musically illiterate they don't know the full story about Galadriel Overdrive and the greatest unfinished concept album of all time. It started in the late 70s when they were the biggest band on the planet. They'd scored a big hit with their 1978 album Cthulhu Voodoo Priestess, and then smashed records globally in '79 with the triply vinyl epic Bagpuss's Voyage into the Astral Subconscious. Such critical and commercial success brings its own problems, however, and the band met up in 1980 facing the two biggest. Firstly, they needed a new mind-blowing concept for their next album that was more awesome than any that had come before. Secondly, they had a vast amount of money that needed hiding from the Inland Revenue. And so it was that at this meeting, someone from the band had an amazing idea. Who it was remains disputed to this day, as each member claims it was they who proposed that the band buy themselves their own Caribbean island. Whoever it was, the rest of the band readily agreed, and their vast fortune was put to work locating and then purchasing their own tropical paradise. They relocated there with an extensive entourage of studio engineers, lawyers, groupies, wives, ex-wives, flunkies, junkies, drug dealers, crystal healers, and a performing elephant they'd won from Brian Ferry in a game of croquet. Once they felt settled, they declared their new home a sovereign and independent republic, while simultaneously announcing a plan to record a quadruple concept album called The Island. This musical odyssey would explore the band's journey to build their own utopia, a new society inspired by the works of Thomas More, Plato, Aleister Crowley, Tolkien, and the taking of vast amounts of acid. It was not long, though, before things started to go wrong. Celebrities and bohemians travelled to the island in droves, only to find the band at war over the direction the island should take, both politically and musically. Rupert Gosmere, the bassist, sought to recreate a 50s English idyll, complete with pre-decimal currency and its own steam train network. Meanwhile, Pep Savage, the drummer, built a treehouse village in the island's southern jungle with a small devoted cult of admirers. The final straw, though, was the rupture between the band's two founders and childhood friends, the great guitarist himself, Kevin Quickfingers Smoothby, and lead singer Diggory St. Nicholas. The latter was increasingly influenced by his gamine French girlfriend, who revealed herself to be a committed Maoist, while Kevin Quickfingers had discovered the works of Ayn Rand. Within days, the two weren't talking. Within a week, they refused to share a studio. The antagonism spread to the other band members, and by the end of the year, they'd each retreated to their own corner of the island. Statements were issued by all members of the band that it was the others that had destroyed the dream that once was Galadriel Overdrive. They then, in turn, each declared their own independent mini-republics and upcoming solo albums. The situation never improved. In '89, the drummer disappeared into his jungle and has never been seen since. Those who had gone to find Pep Savage and his cult ventured into his corner of the island never to return, although sometimes their heads did. Disputes between the other three members grew until by '92 all parties were arming their hardcore fans and record company interns, sending them to fight unending skirmishes over the disputed borders of the mini-republics to establish exactly who it was who remained truest to the Galadriel Overdrive legacy. When I woke up, I recognised immediately that I was in the region of the island run by Diggory St. Nicholas's quasi-Maoist personality cult. A heavily retouched image of the singer stared down at me from every wall. My head still throbbing, I became aware of a voice shouting in the room next door. "You two idiots have to sort this out," the man was growling. "Don't you realise albums just don't sell anymore? Kids today just stream all their stuff. This whole island, all these wars, you aren't earning enough to keep it going." There was a jolt when I realised who this was. Barry Turkington, the Drive's infamous ex-manager, who'd resigned and fled the island the moment the first shots had been fired. "Why do you think I hired that ex-Mossad agent to work undercover as Kevin's girlfriend? It was to bring you two together like this. You guys need to get back on the road. That's where the money is. Rupert's on board. He's going through his 11th divorce and had to sell his last bass just to take on a lawyer. So we just need you to sign." "What about Pep?" I heard Kevin ask. "Who gives a fuck about the drummer? He's just a drummer. Throw a drumstick into the primate enclosure at London Zoo and chances are you'll hit something more than capable of doing his job." My heart sank when I heard this. How could the band reform without all the original members? Listen, Turkington continued, retro tours are big bucks these days. I'm pretty sure I can get you on the bill with 2 ex-members of Kraftwerk and that bird out of Tapau. I've pulled a few strings, and without promising anything, there might be a 4-minute slot on Ant and Dec's Saturday Night Takeaway if you're willing to edit your songs down a bit. I didn't care how bad my head felt. This was wrong. New members, edited songs, it was all a complete betrayal of everything the band stood for. As I listened on, to my horror, it seemed that both the guitarist and singer, staring poverty in the face, were willing to betray their principles. Now, I arranged this fanboy wanker to come to the island, and you're going to give him that scoop that you guys are back together and back on the road. Once this hits the internet, the new improved Galadriel Maximum Overdrive will be what everyone is talking about. I'd heard enough. I wasn't going to be party to any of this. While they carried on trashing the legacy of the greatest progressive rock band in history, I slipped out of the building and disappeared into the night. It's still early days in our fight. It was tricky at first, but as news of the possible reunion eventually broke, I discovered that there were more and more of us on the island willing to fight for the band and preserve its true spirit, even though that has meant going to war with the actual band. We don't have our own mini-republic with borders. We refuse to recognise any of that, but we have a dream, an ideal, a cause we are willing to die for. A few of us have even started composing our own anthem for the whole island to fight under. It's still unfinished, but it's currently 27 minutes long and counting.